7,000 years ago, a hunter was buried in what is now northern Spain. When scientists recovered his DNA, they found something unexpected. The evidence suggested darker skin, but blue eyes. That combination feels unusual only because we are comparing him with Europeans alive today. Now look thousands of kilometers east. Some East Asian populations also evolved lighter average pigmentation, but they did not reach it through exactly the same genetic changes seen in Europe. The visible result could be similar. The route underneath was partly different. That is the real mystery of human skin color. It did not change once. It did not follow one road from dark to light. Evolution kept returning to the same trait and adjusting it again. Why? Because human populations kept entering new environments, carrying different genetic options, and meeting one another again. To understand the process, think of skin color as a balance. Skin contains cells that produce melanin. Melanin helps reduce the amount of ultraviolet radiation that reaches vulnerable tissue. In places with intense ultraviolet radiation, greater pigmentation can provide valuable protection. One leading hypothesis also suggests that heavy pigmentation helped protect folate, a nutrient important in development and reproduction. But sunlight creates a second need. UVB helps the skin begin producing vitamin D. So the body faces two pressures at once. Block too little ultraviolet radiation, and the risk of damage rises. Block too much in a low UV environment, and producing enough vitamin D can become more difficult. There is no perfect skin color for every place. There is only a different balance under different conditions. And those conditions do not change in one simple direction. Latitude matters, but so do season, altitude, cloud cover, and the amount of skin exposed to sunlight. A population could move far from the equator and still face a very different ultraviolet environment from another group living at a similar latitude. The ancestors of the major migrations out of Africa were probably relatively darkly pigmented. That made sense under strong tropical ultraviolet radiation. But even Africa never contained one uniform human shade. Pigmentation varied there too, and many of the genetic variants involved have very ancient histories. Then human populations began spreading into new regions. They encountered different levels of ultraviolet radiation, different seasons, different food sources, and different populations. Natural selection did not simply repaint everyone who moved north. It could only work with the genetic variation present in each group. That is why Europe and East Asia matter. Both included populations that eventually developed lighter average pigmentation than their distant ancestors. But research shows that the strongest genetic changes were not identical. Evolution altered different parts of the same pigmentation system. Imagine two travelers trying to cross the same mountain. They begin from different sides. They use different paths. Yet both eventually reach a similar height. This is called convergent evolution. A similar result appears independently because populations face partly similar pressures. But the similarity is only on the surface. If every population had inherited the same light pigmentation solution from one source, scientists would expect the same major genetic changes to dominate everywhere. They do not. Different populations often show different combinations of changes affecting how pigment is produced, packaged, and distributed. The visible outcome may converge, while the biological route remains partly distinct. But there was never one European switch or one East Asian switch. Skin pigmentation is influenced by many genes. Each population carried its own mixture of variants, and that mixture kept changing as people moved and mixed with other groups. Europe shows how uneven that process could be. Modern humans had lived there for tens of thousands of years before the pigmentation pattern common among many Europeans today became widespread. The hunter from Spain is one clue. His DNA suggested that some light pigmentation variants now common in Europe were still absent from his genome about 7,000 years ago. Yet he likely carried the variant associated with blue eyes. His traits were not changing as one package. Eye color and skin pigmentation could follow different histories, and he did not represent everyone living in Europe at the time. Hunter-gatherers in Scandinavia carried different ancestry and different combinations of pigmentation variants. Some were predicted to have lighter skin than Western hunter-gatherers living during a similar period. Ancient Europe was not one population slowly changing together. It was a patchwork. Then new groups arrived. Early farming populations moved into Europe from regions to the southeast. Later migrations brought more ancestry. They also brought genetic variants that were already present in the people who moved. After those populations mixed, local selection could make some variants more common. So a trait did not always begin where it later became widespread. Sometimes people carried it into a new region. Then the environment continued changing its frequency. This is the part simple explanations often miss. Evolution is not only mutation followed by selection. It is also migration, separation, mixing, chance, and time. Ancient DNA allows scientists to watch parts of that history unfold. Researchers extract damaged fragments from bones or teeth. They examine markers connected with pigmentation. Then they estimate which visible traits were more or less likely. But the result is not a recovered photograph. It is a probability. A poor sample can hide information. A prediction model can miss variance. And a reconstruction can look more certain than the evidence really is. Even a strong prediction usually describes a broad category, not an exact shade. One ancient person can also reveal only one small point in a much larger population history. To understand a region, scientists need many individuals from different places and different periods. Only then can they see whether a trait was rare, common, arriving, or disappearing. The responsible phrase is not, "This is exactly what the person looked like." It is, "The available DNA suggests this was more likely." Even with those limits, ancient DNA has overturned a simple assumption. People living in a region long ago did not necessarily resemble the people living there now. Populations moved. Traits arrived. Some variants spread. Others faded. And unexpected combinations appeared along the way. That is why skin color cannot be divided into three clean biological boxes. It is a continuous trait shaped by many genes and many population histories. Neighboring groups can differ. Distant groups can look similar. And two people with similar skin tones may carry partly different genetic routes to that appearance. Now return to the hunter in Spain and the populations far to the east. Their skin did not belong to separate stages on an evolutionary ladder. One was not ahead of the other. Their ancestors faced changing environments with different sets of genetic options. Evolution kept adjusting the balance. Then migration and mixing changed the available options again. Human skin color kept evolving because human history never stopped moving. It is not the record of one transformation from dark to light. It is the visible record of many populations adapting, separating, meeting, and adapting again. The shade you see in the mirror is one recent outcome of that long process. Not a separate human origin, not a final destination, just one branch of the same changing human story.